Hey guys, lordmon here for another late night deck profile, and as you can see from the thumbnail, we are looking at Bloomlordmon again. Surprisingly, this deck actually got a lot of support in BT13 because of the Rosemon Burst mode deck. And we do actually run a few of the cards from that evolution line in this because a lot of that evolution line is it's very super generic because just like all the other cards in Bloomlord, they specify vegetation, fairy, or plant, and almost everything in the deck is basically those. And even the tamer, the new Yoshino that we got, actually reduces the evolution cost too. So in conjunction with, say, hidden potential discovered, you can make something like just dirt cheap and gain a memory off it too. So it's actually really crazy how powerful this deck is. This deck is still really busted because it can suspend almost everything on the board without even really trying, because not only does it have Quartzmon, but now it also has Rosemon Burst Mode and the new Rosemon that we just got in this set as well. So it's actually really strong. Against a lot of blue decks, it actually hurts it too because they do rely on unsuspension and swinging for game. Against like decks like Alpha, you basically make it so once they suspend for that one attack, they can't unsuspend for that next turn because it's a blanket effect basically. Especially with Rosemont Burst mode, it's a blanket effect, so it's really gross how that works. The only bad matchup I can honestly think of for this deck would be honestly Shine Greymon, because Shine Greymon can easily like one tap like half your stuff with just one Marcus suspending, especially if they run like me, where I run like 4 copies of the new Shine Greymon that does -6,000. If you have 2 stacks of those, you're basically gonna kill everything on the board. But aside from that, almost every other deck, it has a really decent matchup, surprisingly. It's really good against Royal Knights because it swarms faster than them and can get multiple checks and bottom deck their stuff too, which actually hurts them from putting sources in Yggdrasil. So pretty strong, honestly, yeah. Anyway, let's get into the deck. So for the eggs, we are actually running the new Kokomon from EX4. Kokomon is actually probably, honestly, the best egg to date for this deck. Because before we would have to run Argomons from like BT2 or 3, but here we're running the new Kokomon, which states that your turn once per turn, when an effect suspends one of your Digimon, you get to draw, which is very crucial in this deck because potentially you can get your Digisorption target, or you can get the next level 4 that you need to play off of stuff, which is really cool. And yeah, that's why we run the 4 eggs, because these are probably the best eggs for Bloomlord, and Bloomlord continues to basically do decently thanks to this. Um, then for rookies, we're running 14 rookies. It is a bit much because the normal standard is 12. But green has this really weird, how do I say it? Very weird way of bricking. It's kind of like how black used to be, where it just had an issue of just bricking into like really random things sometimes, and sometimes green has that issue too. Sometimes you just never see your rookies, and then sometimes you only see your rookies. This actually happened in my grandest deck multiple times, even though I ran like 13 to 14 rookies. But that was also back when we didn't have mulligans, so that does help a little bit. But at the same time, sometimes it just happens. So you might, so with green decks, you tend to run a little bit more, maybe like 1 or 2 more, just to even it out so that you don't brick. So we run, of course, this being plant, vegetation, and fairy. We are running the Palmon that does on play search the top 4, add 1 card with vegetation or plant, and then add 1 card with fairy, which actually targets a lot of stuff now because we get Bloomlord, we also get the Lilamon, and we also get the Rosemon Burst Mode, which also counts as a fairy now, so you can also grab your burst target, which is really cool. And yeah, we run 4 copies, for consistency. Then we run 3 of the new Lilamon. This one's really cool too. It adds basically the same thing, vegetation, plant, or fairy in one of its traits, and then it also grabs Yoshino, which is our main tamer of this deck now that we don't run Mimi. Because Mimi is good, but at the same time, it's only an extra hatch, which is okay. But with Yoshino, you're getting that extra memory, and in BT13, it's all about memory management now, so you kind of have to do stuff like this. But yeah, then we run Terriermon specifically because of the memory management, especially against decks that gain a lot of memory, i.e. Alphamon, basically being able to gain like 6 memory in 1 turn. If you have this out, Actually, the best way is to have, honestly, against a deck like Alphamon that gains a lot of memory, and same with like Mirage Galgamon, the best is to have multiples out, because that way they can only pop your biggest dude, and then they can't gain memory. That is basically the way that people used to stop decks like that back in BT9 and BT10. You basically would just play a ton of like memory blockers that would just hard stop your opponent from doing anything. And it seems like with how the new support has done, it's actually really good to do that, because not only does Alpha have it, Jessamon has it, Mirage Galga has it, Shine also has it. So you need cards to just stop them from doing that. But yeah. Then for the last two rookies, they're basically the same rookie but just different numbers. Pomomon, this one is the one where if it gets suspended, it suspends one of your opponent's Digimon. And then the other Pomo is specifically for Royal Knights, because this stops them from reducing play costs, or players can't play Digimon by effects, basically. That basically stops the option card for Royal Knights, Purge of the Royal Knights. That option card lets them play one from the source. This will basically prevent that, so they basically can't do removal stuff. They have to do the hard play to remove stuff, basically, so that actually will cost them memory most of the time, so, you have to run this at least to stop them from doing that. And yeah, that's basically all the rookies we run. We run 14 because, as I mentioned, green has a really weird thing, just like black, where it just sometimes doesn't see rookies, so you run a little bit more. For level 4 champions, we of course run 4 of the Sunflowmon, because on Digivolution you can suspend it or suspend something else. And then you get to play one Vegetation Plant or Fairy that has 3,000 DP or less, which is basically everything in this deck. And then Inherit is also good. When Inherit suspends, you get to draw a card. So really cool. Then we run 4 of the new Sunflowmon from BT13. This one is actually really busted. I've been able to get off a lot of evolution costs, like in only like 2 memory because of it. Basically what it does is that when one of your Digimon would Digivolve into a card with Fairy in its trait, you can suspend this and make it cost 2 less. And in conjunction with the Tamer, you're reducing the cost by 3. So Bloomlord being 4 becomes a 1 cost now, thanks to the conjunction of this and that, and it's crazy. So also, its evolution cost, or its inherit, when this Digimon would Digivolve, if you have a green Tamer, you can reduce it by 1. So even if it's not out on the field, it can still help you reduce the cost if you evolve into a Digimon. But as long as you have the Tamer, you're basically set, which is really cool. Then for the last level 4 champion, we run 3 red Vegemon. It's just there for, to be played out. It's a 1 cost evolution for all these guys, so really cool. Green maintains having almost like some of the cheapest cost evolutions, which is what it still does to this day. And yeah, that's basically all the level 4s. For level 5s, we run a very actually small amount. We only run the 4 Agitarmon, because Agitarmon, by suspending one of your green Digimon, including itself, you can play Vegetation Plant or Fairy, just like Sunflowmon, 3,000 DP, and then when evolving, its inherent will trigger for the guy above it. When an effect suspends one of your Digimon, you get to gain a memory. So basically, in conjunction with Bloomlord, you're gaining a lot of memory if your board is already pretty huge. Then we run 1 Argomon, because Digizorption, still very powerful. Then we run one of the other Argomon, because, still very strong regardless. We only run 1 copy because they are limited to 1 each, because they were just super broken back in the day, especially with its effect being able to play a suspended. Then we run 1 Cherrymon, because Cherrymon Digizorption, but also its ability is actually really busted, because when an opponent Digimon attacks, you can switch the target to one of your suspended. So you could purposely make, even if they de-Digivolve it down to this, you could purposely make them target one of your rookies. And you can do that once per turn, which can potentially protect you from OTK range, which is really cool. And then, yeah, that's basically all the level 5s that we run for the deck. Alright, and then that's all for the level 5s for the deck. Now let's go into level 6s. For level 6s, of course, we are running the 4 Bloomlordmons. The reason why, it's Bloomlord, he's the main boss of the deck, aside from the level 7s, but his ability is still busted even in BT13. The fact that when Digivolving, you can suspend a Digimon, including himself. That's the cool thing about green, is that it can suspend itself and still gain the memory off of it. You gain a memory for each of your suspended Digimon, and then if you with plant, vegetation, or fairy, in one of its traits you have in play, if you gain 2 or more If you gain 2 or more, you get to unsuspend this guy. It gains piercing and it gains basically 2,000 and a security check for every 2. So if you have a gigantic board, you're basically piercing like 5 or 6 security, which is really crazy if your board is big enough. Normally, you're going to get maybe 2, maybe 3 security checks with it, but it's still very solid because the fact that it gains all that and it goes back to your turn means you can potentially evolve this into a level 7 right afterwards, so really strong. For the other level 6s, we run 2 Hydramon, because Hydramon still busted to this day. When Digivolving, you can suspend one of your Digimon, including itself. Then you gain a memory for basically, the all turns. When an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended, for each suspended Digimon with Vegetation, Plant, or Fairy in its traits, if you have in play, you gain a memory, which is really good. And then end of your turn, if you have 2 or more suspended Digimon with Vegetation, Plant, or Fairy, you can actually place one of your opponent's suspended Digimon at the bottom of their deck. So potentially this can actually bottom deck their huge guy. So really strong. And that's mainly the reason why we run Hydramon. Mainly it's because for the bottom decking, which is really strong still to this day. And then, yeah. Then the last level 6 we run is 1 Rosemon. The new Rosemon from BT13 is actually incredibly busted. When Digivolving, you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon or Tamers. That is crucial. That is insanely powerful. And then you get to unsuspend her. So you basically get a free unsuspend and you get to attack. And then all turns, when an opponent's Digimon or Tamer becomes suspended, you get to suspend another thing. So potentially, if you set this up properly and you go into the level 7, either burst mode or quartz, you're basically locking down their entire field and gaining memory off of it. So it's just insane how powerful that is. For level 7s, we are running the 2 Quartzmon because it lets you stun your opponent's board by suspending everything on the board. And then for every 2, it gains back a memory. So this is usually never 6 cost. It becomes like a 2 cost half the time. And then when attacking, and then also another cool thing is that all turns, other than this Digimon, all Digimon Tamers don't unsuspend. So once your opponent suspends for that attack, and you have like Cherrymon on the field, you can redirect it to one of your little dudes, and then he's just there going like, okay, well, you can't unsuspend now. Even if your effect says you can, you can't. That's just how Quartzmon works. And then the cool thing is when attacking, you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon again, and then for every like 5, you get to suspend. You get to basically trash the security. And the cool thing is that the newest Rosemon Burst Mode also does the same. You can blast evolve this on this. Basically, that means you have to put you basically return Yoshino from the field back to your hand to evolve this for 0 cost. If not, you can just evolve it for 5. But the cool thing is that when evolving, you can suspend one of your opponent's Digimon and one of their Tamers until the end of your opponent's turn. All of their Digimon and Tamers do not unsuspend. So this is a blanket effect because it specifically says they cannot unsuspend. So that means, let's say they're playing like Jesmon or any OTK deck. Once they swing once, they can't unsuspend. So even if they push it up, it's still affected by that effect. So once they suspend, they're done. But that's only because of the wording specifically. It says all of their Digimon Tamers don't unsuspend. So that is a blanket effect. When attacking, you can trash the top card of your opponent's security stack for every 2. So it's kind of like Quartzmon's when attacking, but it's a lower cost. So we do run just 1 copy of this just so we can evolve into this and suspend their board, basically. Because if we do Rosemon into Rosemon Burst, we could potentially take out like 4 cards, basically, and blanket the board. So really strong. And yeah, that's basically all the Digimon for the deck. For options, we of course run the 4 green memory boost because we want to see our stuff as soon as possible and make stuff cheaper thanks to the memory cost. Then we run 1 of the hidden potential discovery because of course it's limited because it's such a busted card. But the cool thing is that this deck is all about suspension, so this suspending something actually makes it everything free, honestly. And then for Tamers, as I mentioned before, we're running the 3 Yoshinos because not only is it a memory tamer, but it also reduces the cost of any evolution into a vegetation, plant, or fairy by 1. And if you have multiple, you can suspend and gain 2 memory instead. Or if you have all 3, suspend, gain 3 memory. So almost everything in this deck, once it hits level 6, can potentially be super cheap thanks to all this and other things on the board. So just really powerful how that goes. And yeah, that's basically the deck. As I mentioned, this deck's only honestly really bad matchup is Shine Greymon, because Shine Greymon has so much DP reduction, and the fact that this deck has no way to counter that basically makes it its worst nightmare. If your locals is full of Shine Grey, this deck is going to have a rough time. If, let's say, there's only like one or two, then you should be fine because potentially you can skate through by beating all the other ones and then basically kind of stall them out and just basically build a board and kill their guy. Hopefully, if you can do it. If not, you just have to hope that you can suspend their whole board and make it so they can't do anything. Um, but aside from that, every other matchup is actually pretty decent because against OTK decks, it just slaughters them because being able to just hard suspend them forever for their turn makes it so they literally can't do anything. And then once you go to your turn, you just win because you have such a gigantic board, basically. Um, Also, another thing you have to worry about is Def X. This deck hard dies to Def X, but at the same time, it can also recover from the Def X now, surprisingly, a little bit better than it used to be able to, but it's not that fantastic sometimes. You can always bottom deck it with Hydramon or something. You can always suspend it and maybe swing into it with Bloom, but that's if you manage to recover from it. But aside from that, the deck's pretty strong. It's still getting tops to this day. And yeah, as I mentioned every time, this is still a template that you can use to modify however you want. This is just how I want it to run. I want it to just suspend everything and make it so they can't do anything on their turn. But you might be going for more of an aggro thing and swinging faster, or maybe like turn 3 or 2. Yeah, 3 or 2 basically. But yeah, you can run it however you want. And yeah, as usual, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought of the deck. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.